Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for joining our free online lesson. Right. So my name is Nabil Fikri bin Shaizan and I am an application engineer from Acad system. Right. So welcome DTRC, admin, Wiki, CCW, Kelly. So welcome Mr. Robert, Irina, Idris. Right. So welcome everyone to our free online lesson. So for today's topics that I would like to share with you is the AutoCAD basic to plotting. So we're going to take a look on how we can set up our printing. Right. Right. So this is basically the agenda for today. So what we're going to do is that we're going to take a look on the correct way to set up your plotting. Right. So whether you want to plot into the PDF or you want to print it out on a paper. So the first thing that we will take a look, which is we would like to take a look on the plot tools, which is the printing tools, right? So we're going to take a look on some of the things that we can set up from there. And the next thing is we're going to take a look on the layout setups. So layout is basically the main interface for you to plot your tools. Then we want to take a look on the viewport setups, so which we can set up which is the views that you would like to print out. And lastly, we take a look on the plot style tables, which will set up the color types of your printing settings. All right, so let me share my AutoCAD. Right, so I have opened my AutoCAD, so I hope you can see my screen. So this is the sample file that I would like to show you. Right, so let's take a look on the first things that I would like to share with you, which is the plot tools. Right, so the plot tools, so we can take a look on the top side over here, which is the printer icon over here. So this is where we can use to print the image that we want, or we want to transfer into the PDF. So you can use this plot tool. So I'm going to click on the plot tools, and the first thing, right? So first thing that we look is that this particular interface over here, which is the plot tools, right? So the first thing is that we would like to set up, which is the printer. So you can select which is the printer that you have, right? So for this case, you can select to print out on the paper, or maybe you just want to print on the PDF, so you can just select over there. So for this case, I'm just going to take on the PDF as a samples. And to print, so you can just press OK, or before you print out, you can also select on the preview over here. So when you select the preview, you will able to see the preview before you print your paper. Right, so there are some other tools that you can find from here. So the first of all, which is the printer or the plotter. So at the bottom here we have the paper size. So this is where you can select your paper size. Right, so from for the Microsoft Print to PDF, I have several paper size from A3 to A5. But if you want more, so you can select. Let's say I have a Canon G300 printer, and you can see I have different types of paper size that I can select from here. So depend the paper size that you have over here depend on your printer that you have selected. So the next thing is below here we have this plot area. So this is where we can choose which is the area that we want to print. For example, I have this extends, or maybe I want to print out the display. So if I go to preview, so it will show the displays, which is what I see over here. So if I move my image over here and preview, so basically it will try to print that particular around the area. Right. So and then we have the some other view. For example, we have the view. For example, I have several other view that I have printed before. For example, I have this dining room, which I have view screenshot. I also have this kitchen. Right, so once you save this view, you can also print out. You have the selection on this program. Right, so let me select. For example, I have this view. and then I have these two views that I can select from here. And we also have these Windows buttons. For example, if I want to, let's say, if I want to print out on this particular area, so I can use Windows. So I pick Windows and I click on the window button. Here I can select which is the area that I want. So basically this box area over here. So when I go and preview the area, so this is basically what you get. So that is some of the things that you can control from here. And then we also have this plot scale. So by default, we can see it's able to fit on a paper. You can also select to adjust the scale of this on this printer. So you will see it much better if I just show you on the layout. So we will see this one later on. But for this on the model layout, you can also click and print on the paper. Another things that you have over here is that you also have these plot styles tables. So this is where you can use to print out which type of lines or colors for the individual object over here. So there are some of the things by default already provided from us. So we will take a look on this later on, and you can also create a new one. All right. So, and then we also have this plot option over here. For example, I have this object line weight, right? So if I want to see my line weight, so I can make sure to turn it off. If I uncheck that one and I go to preview, so let's go to window. Let's say I just preview over here. Then I can go and see, right? So I believe this one is unchecked. So basically unchecked, basically what you see over here. So if I turn on this line weight, so you see there are some line weights applied over here. So if I uncheck the line weight and I go to preview, so there are no line weight that you can see over here. So if I check the line weight, and let's go with the windows, then you can see it much better. So you can see the line weight has been applied from here. Right, so there are some of the things that you can find from here. So if you have transparency set up on some of the lines, so you can turn it on. If not, you can turn it off. Then lastly, on the draw over here, we also have the drawing orientation. If you want your preview, your paper size to be on the portrait on the landscape, you can also select on the drawing orientation over here. If you don't want to select from here on the paper side itself, some others have different types of paper view. For example, let me see. Let's say if I go with the printer, no, not the printer. Right. Okay, so some are the things that you can also select from here. Right. So let's just proceed. Okay. So one of the things that you might need to take a note is that when you set up your layer properties, so just make sure that your plot is enabled. This is just a quick way. For example, some of the things that I don't want to be printed out. But for example, this door over here. So if I go and print the preview, and you can see there's red door over here, you can see if I don't want to see it, what I can do on the layer properties is that you can find this the door layer. For example, this is the door layers. So I can click on this plot over here, and what it does is that it will disable the plot for this particular layer. Right? So basically, you can still see it over here, but if I try to print this view, then you can start to see that the door are not able to be seen anymore. So that is the function for the plot button. Right, so from the layer properties, so we have this plot button, so you can turn it off and on. So just another quick note is that on the depth point layers, you will not be able to turn on the plot. So make sure if you draw something, try not to draw on the depth point, because this will definitely not be printed out. Right, so if I try to turn it on, so I cannot turn on or off like I did with the other plot. Right, so that is some of the things from the models. Right. So the what we call the right way for you to print your paper, that will be on the layout, right? So the correct way or the best way, right? So layout basically made for you to print out your paper. So try to use layout first before you print your paper. Now when I go to layouts, right, or if I want to create a new one, I can click on this plus button to create a new layout. So by default, it will try to select everything, every image that available from the model and cram it out in one viewport over here. So I don't need this viewport right now, so I'm just going to delete this button over here. So let's start with this fresh paper size over here. Now, if you take a look on your tab, you can also see your layout tab is been highlighted, which means layout is not available. If I go to the model, so there are no layouts that you can select, no layout tabs. So if I go to layout, so right now you can use this layout. So basically this layout tab is meant for you to use in this layout panel. Right. So the first thing is before we start to import our view inside here, so you might want to check or set up your paper size. So there are several other ways that you can do that. So you can right click on your layout and select the page setup manager. It will pop up this page setup manager, or from the layout itself, you can also click on this layout page setup, and this page setup manager will be appear, and you can select based on which page setup, which layout that you want. Right, so I'm just going to modify the layout one. And first thing first, of course, you might want to set up the paper size of your drawing. So I have several other paper size, so I can select which paper size that I want. Right. So for example, like I said before, you can also select your paper size orientation based on this paper size over here. For example, I have this Archie E, so you can see this preview of your paper, right, including the size as well. So if I click on the other, we can also have the landscape for this particular paper size, right? But you can also use this drawing orientation if you need to. Now for this case, I'm going to choose my paper size to be A3. So let's take a look and find an A3. So I'm going to print out the PDF, and I'm going to use A3. Now, one thing that you might notice is that on our paper size, so we have this dash line over here. All right, so these dash lines, above this dash line, you will not be able to print out, even though you have your printing image right above this drawing. So that particular drawing will not be printed out above this particular line. So make sure your drawing is inside of this square dash line over here. Right, so I'm going to choose print to PDF, the paper size with A3. So before I set up anything else, I'm just going to OK first, and so that we can see our paper size over here. Right, so this is basically the paper for A3 that I have. So the first thing first, I also might want to include my which is my title blocks. So I can use on this insert button over here to include my title blocks, so which I made for basically for this image over here. So when I put, so sometimes your paper size and also your title block might not be matching the right size. So if I want to, I can also explode. So let me explode this this drawing over here, and I can edit this particular title blocks. So let me edit this title block first, just to stretch it. Oops, stretch. Enter. So I'm going to stretch above. Just make sure to be inside of this paper. Again, stretch this one. So just all right. Okay, so I have my title blocks ready. So the first thing is, before we go back to our printing is that on the plot, so you want to insert our view first, which is from the model over here. So we don't want to include everything directly inside over here. So maybe you want to input some of the other areas. For that, you can use from these layouts, and which is this viewport over here. Right. So we have some other ways to include our viewports. So we have insert view, but I'm just going to use rectangular. For example, if I pick rectangular over here, and let's say I just snap it over here. So I have this rectangular, this will be my viewport. So by default, automatically, you will see that it will automatically select everything which have on the models. So maybe I don't want everything inside. So what I can do is that I can double click inside and I can pan it out, zoom in and zoom out to which area that I want it best, right? So before you finish off with your views for your zoom in and zoom out, which is the scale. So one thing to notice is that you can also set up your scale right over here, right? So what I have over here is the scale of 0.009. So if I want my view to be on the perfect scale, so I can just select over here. So instead of selecting the random number over here, I can select the number that I already specified for. So 0.009, so basically very near to 1 ratio of 100. So if I click over here, so it's try to zoom in, and I have the ratio of 100, right? So if I click and select other type of ratio, it will try to zoom the scales of that particular ratio. So I'm just going to go with ratio to 1 to 100. But you can see maybe I wanted to make it slightly bigger. So if I try to zoom, so it makes a little bit bigger. So the maximum that I have is 1 to 100. So if I want to add another scales, I can do that. I can scroll down. I have my custom scales over here. All right, so maybe I want to add 1 to 150. So I can add, click and add over here. And let's say 1 to 150. All right, so don't forget to input the name. So just going to go with 1 ratio 150. Okay. And if I go over here, now I have my new ratio that I have created before, which is available for me. Also, this one is basically a little bit smaller. Of course, I don't want that. So let's say I'm going to go with 1 to 80. So I can just, again, go to custom and create a new view from here. Right, so I have a little bit bigger view over here. So this viewport that you have created, you can also select and adjust the size of your viewports. So one thing is that when you zoom in inside, you can zoom in, move your mouse and so on. So just make sure your viewport is, your scale has been selected correctly. And I don't want to accidentally move, or I don't want to accidentally zoom in the scale. So what I can do is that I can lock my viewport. So I have this button to lock. So I just click this lock button. So if I try to zoom in, so what it does is that it scroll down outside of this. And when I try to pan, it's panning outside of this drawing cell. Okay, right. So that is some of the things that you can do. So let's try to add another rectangular view. Right, so I'm going to add another view from here. Let's say this particular view, I want it to be all again. So I can just double click inside. So if I does not double click inside yet, when I scroll, it will scroll the entire drawing, entire papers. So to move inside of the paper, so just double click inside, and you will see this. It will say this is on the model side, right? So which means when I zoom in and zoom out, it will zoom in and out for this viewport. So if I want to view in and out for the paper, so I can just double click outside. Now I can zoom in, zoom out on the paper. Right, so again, I just double click inside and I try to select which is the ratio the best. So let's go with 1 to 150, and let me just move it a little bit on the middle side. And lastly, I will lock this size of it. Right, so that is some of the things from the layout viewports. So we can also insert from the view, right? So if I click over here and I press the new button over here, for example, I want to focus on some area, maybe on the top side over here, so I can just simply select this box, and when I press enter, it will automatically insert the view over here. So again, I'm just going to insert another view. Maybe this time I want it to view on this dining room. So just click over here, click and press enter, and I can now include it inside of the dining room. So this is one is obviously too big, so let me just resize again. So right now I'm zooming in, zoom out, so I can try to resize it to make it a little bit smaller. Right, so the reason why this one cannot be zoomed, cannot be changed, right, sometimes it's because your viewport has been locked. Right, so if you're using these new viewports, so automatically it will lock the view. Right, for example, I go with this area and enter. When I double click inside, or if I try to zoom in and zoom out, I cannot change the view because it automatically lock the view. Right, so you can unlock the view by clicking on this lock button over here if you wish to. So let me just double click outside and try to change my scale. Oops. Right, so let me check that one. Right, so let's say this is basically the viewport that you have that you can print it out. So again, I can go ahead and go to the printing and I can print out. So let's take a look on the other things that we can do to set up our plotting. Right, so I'm just going to click on my printer, or I click on these page setups and modify my page setups. So we already have our plotter, and so the paper size has been selected. And the plot area, I'm going to choose layout. So basically, when I choose layout, it will preview the entire the paper space on your layout over there. So that is why the best way for you to use your printing is on the layout itself. Now let's take a look on other things. Over here we have this scale, right? So for example, I have the scale over here which is on inches, which is 1 on 1 inches. So when I preview, I have this particular view which is on inch. So if I change to millimeters, automatically it will try to change the units over here. So when I go to preview, the view does not change. But if I change the unit 1 to 1, so I will have the exact view which is on the millimeter view over there, right? So for that, you can select from the scale just to make sure. Just select on which of the size that you want. So 4 inches, so I'm going to go with 1 to 1. So I have this view over here. Now, for the last thing, let's take a look back on this plot style table. So what this plot style table does is that, first of all, I have a few other options over here. So if I go with none, and I will try to print it out, so basically nothing happens. Basically what you input over there, that is what you see. You have the colors, or you have the line weight, so everything has been set up. Now if I go to Acad, this one is also same with the none, right? So the Acad one is basically the default, which is none, but the only difference is that I can edit these particular settings for the Acad over here. So we will take a look on the edit later on. So I have other things such as grayscale. For example, if I go with grayscales and I go to the preview, and then you can see all of my drawing has been set up on the color black and white. And not only that, if I zoom in on certain area, you can start to see some of this line which is on dark color, while some of the lines is a little bit dark color, like gray. Some of these are black. So that one is changed based on the colors that has been set up before. For example, I have different colors. if I look over here, so this basically my wall on layer basically black color. So some of this a little bit lighter color, so we have the lighter color to be gray instead of black. So that is the gray scales. Right, so that is basically the gray scales of plot style table. So if I go to monochrome, so monochrome basically just black and white, doesn't matter what type of color that you have. So everything has been changed to black. So there's no gray scale over here. So basically, if you want to black and white, you can use monochrome. And then we also have this screening over here, which what it does is that it will transparent your drawing. For example, if I go with screening 50, and if I go to preview and then start to see that my view is a little bit blurry because of the screening, which has been reduced to 50, or maybe I want to go with 25 transparency and start to see my view look a little bit blurry over here. So that is some of the plot style tables that you can find from here. So if I wanted to edit or create a new one, for example, if I were to edit, let's say I edit my Acad over here, and then I click on this edit button over here. So here we have this form view, is that it will list down all of the colors available. And over here you can select which color that you want. For example, which for this Acad, everything has been set according to these use object colors. Right, so I have this grayscale off and some of the things. So if I choose monochrome instead, then you start to see my color is red and the properties have been override into black. So everything has been turned into black colors. Right, so that is the settings that you can do on your plot style table. For example, let's say some of these area, maybe for example red color, I still want to have the red color, so I can choose from here red. Right, so maybe I want my transparency for this color red, the screening, so I can just reduce the value over here. Maybe I want to change the line weight, so everything you can change from here. So let's try to mix some of the samples of our own plot style table. So for this case, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a copy from this monochrome. So let me click on this one. Right, so to create a copy, so I'm just going to save this monochrome as a new file. So I'm going to save, let's say monochrome 005, for example. So let me save this one. So I have additional plot style tables, which is monochrome 005. Or if you want to create a new one, you can just click new, start from scratch, and it will basically use this Acad over here. So I have this monochrome 005, which everything has been set to black. So, but for example, maybe some other area that I wanted to enable for coloring. For example, maybe I want to highlight it using the revision clouds. So for this case, I'm going to use the revision cloud, and let me just make sure that the doors has a different color and not red. So let me set to other colors. So let's say index color 10. So it will not be red, so it will not be shown again. Right. So next, I'm going to create new layers, which will have a color of red, which is index color number 1. So okay, and I'm going to create a revision clouds. So let's say I'm just going to highlight some over here, which is I'm going to use layer 1, which is red colors. Right, so I have some revision cloud over here that maybe I want just use for highlighted, and also let's say one which is over here. Okay, I have two revision cloud over here, which is on the red color. So I go back again on my plotting, and I'm going to edit my monochrome 005. So everything has been black except for the color 1. So I'm just going to use object color, save. So if I go to the preview, and you start to see that only that particular color are able to be colorized. So for that, you can set up any color that you want from here. For example, I still want to see the color blue, so I can just simply select and use object color, or I can just rewrite using other colors from here. So that is basically the things that I would like to share with you. So if you have any questions, so you can just type in on the chat, or you can also unmute yourself. So I will still available from here. So I will remain on until we end the session for today. So far as anybody have questions that you would like to ask? All right, so I haven't seen anything from the chat. So I believe you have no questions so far. So if not, I would like to end the session for today. Right, so that is basically all. So I believe no questions, so we can end the session for today. So thank you everyone for joining our free online lesson. And I hope we can see you guys again on our next free online lesson. So thank you very much for joining, and have a nice day, and bye-bye.